My first experience with the Red Faction series was with Red Faction 2. At the time, the only current generation system I owned was the GameCube, and Red Faction 1 wasn't on it. Without having that history of playing Red Faction 1, I went into Red Faction 2 completely blind, with no experience with the series or expectations, and I ended up enjoying it. I found the story to be very predictable, but the action and destruction is what really drew me in. When you shot an individual with an explosive and then they would blow up into chunks, this was the first time that I saw destruction like this, and this went with the walls, objects within the environment, and including all the people. Red Faction 2's multiplayer was my most memorable part, as I participated in the fun arena-type battles that were very enjoyable, especially with my beloved 4-player split screen. I played many late nights of the multiplayer with friends and bots. As I got older, I learned that Red Faction 2 is not the most beloved entry within the series and lacked many elements present and loved within the first Red Faction. I played the first Red Faction recently, and I can see what fans of the series were talking about. The first Red Faction had an impressive destruction system that had you destroying walls and using that as a way to get around an area. The game was still linear and very fun to play around with this destruction system. The game moved with great pacing and grabbed your attention right out of the gate. That destruction was something the developers wanted to improve for their third entry. With the recent remaster of Red Faction Guerrilla, I felt like it was an appropriate time to take a look back at the third entry in the Red Faction series. I present to you a look back at Red Faction Guerrilla. Volition wanted to push destruction to new limits with Red Faction Guerrilla. They aimed to create an open world game where everything could be destroyed within that space. The open world would allow for a destructible sandbox that had more than one way to destroy something. The shift from the previous linear games to an open world setting would give the developer and the player room to fully utilize this mechanic. Though the explosions would be impressive, the developers wanted to go beyond the spectacle and implement a physics-based destruction system that would react to the player in real time. This would result in the same structure breaking and falling in different ways depending on where the building was hit. If the player decided to target a building's support beams with remote detonators, the player could bring down the building more efficiently and differently than just wildly throwing explosives at the building. It was common for many open world games at the time to not allow many buildings to be entered into seamlessly within their open area. Usually players would enter a building and then would be presented with a loading screen. With Guerrilla, buildings could be destroyed from the outside and from the inside. As a result, the developers needed to consider the player blowing up the building from the inside along with how a building would look like if it was damaged from the outside and how that would impact it internally. Buildings would act differently depending on what was used against them, like an explosive versus a hammer. Another important aspect of the destruction is that it wasn't scripted. The buildings wouldn't fall the same way twice. This factored into their efforts to construct a sandbox that players could play within and blow up anything they wanted. The development team used real-world situations for capturing the authenticity of the destruction. Volition wanted to appropriately capture that look and feel. One interview tells of an experience where the team camped outside of a hotel that was scheduled to be demolished, and used this as a great opportunity to witness what they hoped to capture within their own game. This experience was used to capture that look and feel while at the same time observing small nuances like materials and objects breaking and how they broke as a result of the demolition. Volition wanted to provide a means of entertainment and escapism while presenting destruction that was both believable and realistic in detail. Guerrilla's destruction is a great example of why games are played. the sense of empowerment. Buildings crumble and break with the tools available to the player, but depending on how that player uses the destruction, it can turn that sense of power into a moment of vulnerability. While breaking down a structure can make you feel like a god, being within a building as it's collapsing around you can make you feel very small. There was choice within the destruction, as bridges and locations could be destroyed as a means to take out your enemies. But once that bridge is destroyed, you may have closed off a potential escape route for a future mission. Red Faction 1 took place on Mars, while Red Faction 2 took place on Earth. They opted to go back to Mars for Guerrilla. They wanted to continue where the story left off in 1. While many were happy to see Red Faction return to its Mars roots, the decision was split among the community on the change in perspective. Up to this point, both Red Faction 1 and 2 were first-person shooters. During the development of Guerrilla, Volition played with using both a first-person and third-person perspectives. The game did start out as a first-person shooter like the previous entries, but Volition noticed that since the destruction was on a more open and grander scale, they felt a third-person camera would provide more situational awareness from all the debris being thrown around. They said it was hard to judge that area from a first-person perspective, which is why they ended up going with a third-person camera. After about 5 years in development, much of the time spent on this new destruction engine, the game was ready. In June of 2009, Red Faction Guerrilla was released to the world. The setting is Mars. The Earth Defense Force, allies from the first game, are now the enemies. Earth's natural resources are running scarce, and the EDF must obtain all resources from Mars. This resulted in the workers of Mars being forced into a state of forced labor. A reformed Red Faction is the only force willing to rebel against the opposing EDF and take back Mars. The player is cast as Alec Mason, a miner who is on board a ship heading to Mars to reunite with his brother. Alec's brother Daniel informs Alec of the terrible conditions they face with the EDF in power.
What the hell was that?
The EDF. They own the road and everything else. Forget the propaganda. Free Mars is over.
Red Faction? Didn't enough people die the last time?
We're under martial law here. Prison camps. Torture. Death squads. People need something to believe in.
It is revealed that Daniel is part of the Red Faction, and he wants Alec to join up. Alec is reluctant to join. Following their reunion, the two are stopped by the EDF. The EDF openly attacks the brothers, but only Alec survives. Alec wants to avenge his brother's death, and as a result, joins the Red Faction in their mission to push out the EDF.
They'll hunt you from here to the ice caps. He said I was Red Faction. Like it or not, Mason, you are now.
You'll participate in a series of battles within the Red Faction as you chip away at the EDF. The plan is to take back each section of Mars for the Red Faction. Through the fighting, Alec makes his way to an abandoned Ultor base. During this mission, Alec steals an unknown device called the Nanoforge. The Nanoforge is made into a weapon to assist the Red Faction in their mission. This is turned into the Nanoforge rifle that can essentially disintegrate objects and people. With this new weapon, morale has risen and the Red Faction successfully wins battles against the EDF. Sadly, those victories are met with a harsh defeat that significantly hurts the Red Faction forces.
What do we do now?
I I don't know. Just give me a second to think.
Everyone's dead. The commander's dead. We need a plan.
Only Sam, another Red Faction member, and Alex survived this devastating attack, with the rest of the Red Faction forces disbanded. At the same time, the EDF is sending in a final force to end the Red Faction once and for all. Sam decides that they need to try to seek the help from the Marauders. The Marauders are a mysterious tribe that is living on Mars, and they are not a fan of the EDF. It is revealed that Sam is a former member of the Marauders herself and left the tribe a long time ago to join the Red Faction. The Marauders agree to help the remnants of the Red Faction defeat the EDF, as long as they can keep the Nano Forge following their victory. These terms are agreed to, and Alec and Sam now have new allies to join the fight. The final mission consists of Alec facing off against General Roth and his army. Alec defeats Roth and his forces, then they use the Nano Forge to eliminate the Hydra. The Red Faction is victorious.
It's over.
They'll be back.
Not for a long time.
We'll be ready for them. I came to Mars to make a living. Keep my head down, stay out of trouble. But I found something here I wasn't counting on. The Red Faction gave this planet a voice. Mars gave us a home and a dream of a new world.
As you can see from the story summary, the story sets itself up nicely as being a great backdrop to the action. The narrative does lack depth and emotion to provide some weight to the situations. A good example of this is when Alec's brother dies. This is Alec's motivation for joining the Red Faction and fighting the EDF, but Daniel is introduced and killed within 30 minutes of each other. On the one hand, more time spent with Daniel and some story-related events may have helped to develop an emotional hook to these two characters. Alec and Daniel are brothers, and there's a lot of potential to develop that relationship to the player, and then that way when Daniel dies, the player will feel that loss along with Alec. On the other hand, while the story lacks depth, it doesn't get in the way of the action and the gameplay. While the story seems rushed at times and lacking that depth, it is pushing you to get to the open world as quickly as possible so you can experience the best parts of the game. The story gives context to the destruction. Before we look more in depth with the gameplay, I wanted to discuss how the player's actions do factor into the overall narrative of the game. Throughout the campaign, the player is consistently participating in missions and side activities that always involve taking down the EDF and building up the Red Faction. Every building you destroy, soldier you kill, and vehicle you steal is effectively contributing to the defeat of the EDF. While the side activities present themselves as segmented activities, participating within them contribute to the overall battle of the planet. In some way, the activities factor into that overall goal. This continually means you're always working towards that goal in whatever activity you're completing. Essentially, you're not just completing side quests for the sake of side quests, but rather quests to better the Red Faction and bring down the EDF. Once you finish the tutorial mission, you are dropped into the open world and are given the objective of taking down the EDF and removing them from the Parker sector. To unlock story missions that push the narrative forward, you'll need to drop the EDF influence within the area. This is done through destroying their buildings and forces and completing side missions. As you eliminate EDF forces, you can help grow the morale of your Red Faction group. As your morale increases, you'll inspire the people of the sector into helping you with the fight. I really do love the morale aspect of the game, as it actually assists you while you're playing, rather than just being a bar you need to fill. Since the setting is about a rebellion against an opposing force, I like that developers included this aspect of the game of inspiring people to fight and how they react to your actions. You as the player are attacking the EDF, and with every successful attack and missions help to inspire more people. It is rewarding to see random Red Faction soldiers assist you in missions because you've inspired the area. This is a tangible and successful means of fitting into the setting. Scattered throughout the open world are buildings and bases to destroy to push down the EDF's control of the sector. They are always fun to complete since the combat and destruction system are great. Nothing is more satisfying than taking a heavy vehicle and ramming a structure with it, and you go right through the building as if it's made of paper. The aggressive force of the EDF makes you consider when the best time to attack is and the best time to run away. I like that the EDF is very aggressive. They will swarm you with soldiers, land vehicles, and ships. Doing hit and run tactics does help you give off that feeling of being a resistance fighter and being the little guy against a bigger guy. Escaping from an onslaught of enemy troops can be exhilarating, especially when you're using the destruction to your advantage. Need to make a quick escape? Make a hole in the wall with your hammer and keep running. Many games ask you how to get around an object. Red Faction asks you to go through it rather than around it. And with this destruction, this also feeds back into the player having an impact on the game world. As you destroy structures, those checkpoints and structures will stay destroyed, making the player feel like they left their mark there. Guerrilla has a nice variety in side missions too. The demolition challenges require some thought and act like these puzzles within a given area. You must destroy a structure within a given period of time, and you can only use the supplies that are given to you for that mission. This is a great change of pace from all the chaotic action, as you're trying to just think on a different level without having to deal with a large group of soldiers attacking you. These challenges may take you a few times to figure out as you try to find that aha moment to solve the puzzle. Other side missions really fit within the rebellion setting. The raids and defensive missions are epic. Defense missions require you to race to a location and defend the Red Faction forces from a large group of waves of EDF forces. You need to make sure to keep your few Red Faction soldiers alive or it's over. These get really chaotic due to the large amount of foes you'll have to contend with. The raids have you aiding a Red Faction force as they are attacking an EDF base. I enjoy both of these types of missions, as the defensive missions make you feel like that little guy trying to ward off a huge opposing force. The raid missions turn the tables and make you that attacker. If you want some simple fun, you can do these missions where essentially you ride shotgun with this other guy driving and you just blow everything up on screen. It's simple and it's fun. Another piece of simple and fun are the missions where you need to destroy a set amount of vehicles. The mission starts out with giving you a tank or many of the variety of walkers, and you can just blow everything up that you see. The destruction engine really makes good use of having this very satisfying combat. You can also steal cars and bring them back to your base within a given time limit for game rewards. As you're going about the sectors, you'll get random messages for EDF convoys that you can destroy. These are particularly enjoyable because they have more variability to them. The map will highlight their path and you can set up an ambush along that path. There was one instance where I took a few cars and blocked the road, and then I waited for the convoy to get in close, and then I started firing rockets upon them. One detail I liked about the open world is how the game lets you explore a big chunk of it right away, right after the tutorial mission. You can go to these different sectors and grab some better weapons early on, along with some more scrap for upgrades. As you complete missions and destroy buildings, you'll earn scrap. Scrap can be used to buy health upgrades, more guns, and increase ammo capacities. Guerrilla supplies a large arsenal of weapons to use. You have access to your sledgehammer, which is both satisfying to use against buildings and people. That whack sound that plays when you hit someone just adds to that satisfaction. You'll have an assault rifle, a pistol, a plasma assault rifle, a sniper rifle, and a nanoforge rifle which disintegrates everything. You get a rocket launcher and remote mines. The remote mines can be pretty funny, especially when you throw them on an enemy and they start dancing because they have an explosive attached to them. You also get a buzzsaw gun and a lightning gun. The shooting in the game isn't the best shooting you've experienced, but it is pretty good. Considering its age, the game has a pretty decent cover system too, which is useful in some of the bigger fights. But since the cover can be destroyed, you won't always stay in one spot forever. Being that this is a game that's about a rebel group that's using guerrilla tactics, I wish there was an option for stealth. A stealth option would have fit within the game considering the Red faction is smaller than the EDF and wouldn't always face them in open combat. The stealth could have been very satisfying as you try to sneak around an outpost, placing bombs on key locations to be able to blow up the whole place in one shot. And then you sneak back out and then click the explosives and then watch the base crumble. If they ever make a sequel, I would love for them to add an option for stealth in some way, shape, or form. While optional stealth could have added to the experience, I do think a more advanced AI would have further helped the combat scenarios. The enemy AI isn't too smart, and they will try to overwhelm you with numbers rather than tactics. It would have been exciting to see the AI try to use the same destruction to their advantage as they try to take you out. Instead of enemy soldiers operating as normal AI where they're trying to work around and find your location, it would have been cool to have them essentially be going through walls and trying to use that destruction just like you would. This would be particularly great to happen during some of the chase sequences. If you annoy the EDF enough, they will send out airships to take you out. It would have been great in a situation where you're fleeing the area and about to make it across the bridge, and then the AI sees that you're following this path and decides to try and destroy that bridge to make it difficult for you to get away. Instances like this could have further showed the dominance of the EDF. I have no idea what goes into programming AI, so I don't know if this is even possible, but the concept of creating something like this is really interesting. I wanted to end this section by focusing on how the game and many of its missions and the open world itself can be approached from different means. You can swing your hammer, crash a vehicle, shoot rockets, and more to destroy buildings. Red Faction provides a good variety in its toolset for taking on the EDF, and lets the player use that toolset and how they want to within that open space. This works to the game's benefit as many of the encounters feel more concerned about player input rather than scripted set pieces. The game would work even without the impressive destruction as the action is chaotic and at many times very exhilarating. But the destruction doesn't just present itself as being something impressive to look at, but rather something you can interact with, and it changes how you think about going about the game. Like I said before, many games have you thinking about how to get around a target. Red Faction says go through it. I need to find an exit, or I can blow up a wall and make a new exit. The enemies are shooting at me from a gun emplacement. I can disintegrate that gun emplacement and now they can't use the gun anymore. Red Faction excels at delivering a memorable gameplay experience, and that's just the single player campaign. Red Faction Guerrilla really did come packed with content. They didn't have to include multiplayer here as there's plenty of content in the single player, but I'm happy they decided to include it. Multiplayer takes many familiar modes that you've seen in many games and brings fun weapons and destruction to the experience. The destruction does factor into the gameplay here as each map starts out with these fully built structures, and throughout the match they can be destroyed, which results in the environment changing as you play it. Maybe a tower is destroyed, which offers a new cover now because of the debris, or a vantage point that you were using before is now lost. Walls can act as a means of defense and safety, but once they are gone, now you're in a different environment. I think this is important to make note of too, that since the destruction is player created and not scripted, the same map may feel very different every time you play it. Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag take on another level of fun with the added nature of destruction. Siege is a destruction specific mode that has one team defending structures and another team trying to blow them up. You all have the weapons available in the single player for use in the multiplayer. The levels usually have their own loadouts for the players to start out with, and then you can pick all the other weapons up while you're on the match. The multiplayer adds some extra backpack items that you don't get access to in the main campaign. Later in the campaign, you do get access to the jetpack. While you get that in the multiplayer, you also have access to a backpack that can create a tremor and crumble buildings around you, a concussion blast that sends enemies flying and gives you the opportunity to kill an enemy before they stand back up. You'll get a rocket pack that sends you flying up and it damages everything in your path. There's another version of the backpacks that will send you forward and essentially rampaging through a bunch of objects, or you can go through people. These backpacks are great to use, especially if you have someone hiding behind a wall and you rampage through that wall to instantly kill them. The action can be an enjoyable, arcadey mess. If you're facing off against a team who is good with ranged weapons, it can be a rather one-sided match. The backpacks are great to use and contribute to the chaos. Something I really do like is how you are rewarded with experience points if another team member gets a kill. It's a small amount of experience, but in a way it kind of keeps people feel like they're always earning a little bit of something and always contributing to the group. I am all for the multiplayer types that push your skill level and want you to continue to get better and grow. Red Faction kind of puts that to the side and says, how about you just kick back and have some fun for a while? The multiplayer does have its fair share of issues, but it creates its own blend of chaos that is unique and specific to Guerrilla. Wrecking Crew is a fun side mode that can provide hours of entertainment. You choose your map and your weapon and you go to town on all these buildings in the area. You don't have to worry about any enemies attacking you and only focus on taking down the buildings. The destruction is on full display here and it's a delight. You can turn on a modifier which will cause the structures to be more brittle. You have to wonder if the developers use this sort of area as a testing ground for the main game and to play around with how destruction would work in the main campaign. I wonder if Wrecking Crew started as their testing labs for destruction and then they figured out how to make all the pieces work here. And then after using it for their testing ground, they figured, why not make a side mode out of it? Regardless, it's a great side mode and one that you can quickly jump into for a little bit or play for a long time. The major piece of DLC features a prequel story with Sam. This mini-story covers her time with the Marauders. The main focus of the drama is between Sam and her sister. The story takes an interesting story concept and only uses it at a high level. The tension between Sam and her sister is very black and white and not fully explored. This could have been a great opportunity to have emotional conflict between two siblings with two different ideologies. It would have been a good comparison potentially to Alec and his brother. But Red Faction isn't really about the most in-depth narratives, which is completely fine. The story features Sam saving her sister from the EDF and then pushing them back out of the area. The final mission sees Sam rescuing Red Faction forces and seeing her leave the Marauders to join the forces of the Red Faction in their fight against the EDF. The DLC does feature some new weapons like the effective SMG along with many others. You do get access to some Mad Max looking vehicles to be able to drive around the area with, but for the most part it's just another area that you get to experience the core gameplay that made Guerrilla great. It complements the main game nicely while giving some insight into the events before the main story. As we move towards the conclusion of this retrospective, I wanted to show and discuss one of Volition's trailers that they released prior to the game's launch. I give you the Ostrich Hammer.
You guys have been doing some pretty good work on Red Faction Guerrilla so far. I was home alone last night, trying to legally download some MP3s when I accidentally uploaded some of your screenshots to the internet. It's good though, the NeoGAF forums sort of ran with them. You know this is the artwork that you guys were doing for the game, which was pretty good. But now check this out, see what they did. The ostrich. The internet has spoken, they want our game to have more ostrich, and we're gonna give it to them. Okay, questions?
Are you serious?
Yeah, Blaine, you have a question?
Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about what you're working on?
I'm actually working on concepts for the Ostrich Hammer.
How's that going so far?
Too many feathers. Not enough feathers. This one's facing north, not southwest. This one's upside down. And this is a f***ing emu. Block. Look at me. Look at me. Are you taking this seriously?
Is there a chance of it possibly getting cut?
Well, I can't really say, but I know that some people are pretty excited about it. What you doing?
I am working on some new sales projections.
I thought you did that last week.
Well, that was before we added the ostrich. Okay, thanks for your time, everybody. As you can see, we have got the ostrich hammer implemented as a multiplayer unlock in the game, so pretty exciting. Next steps, marketing needs us to come up with a catchphrase. So I thought what we'd do is watch this little video. Anytime you see someone get killed by an ostrich, just shout out whatever comes to mind. Mix it up. Let's get creative, all right? I'll get things started off. Here we go. And here it comes. Ostrich, baby. Here we go. Gonna kill somebody. Got an ostrich. Boom, haunt!
Haunt? Haunt. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Hey, please, can I get just a little bit of positivity from you today?
Cue emulation?
Emu is the wrong species, but I like what you're doing.
Birdtacular. How about that?
I think Birdtacular would be great if we were making games for 3-year-olds.
Technical foul! You know, like in basketball, only the foul is spelled F-O-W-L.
Ostrich-sized.
Hey, it wasn't even your turn. It wasn't even a hit.
Yeah, no, it's like a play on the word ostracized.
I don't know what that is. That's a word?
Yeah, it means to throw something or somebody out. Like, watch me. Bang! Ostrich-sized.
No, bird-brained.
I don't think that's actually a word, and I don't understand why you're talking over Steve, who is pecking out some amazing ideas over here.
Look, I've had it up to here with this ostrich hammer bullshit, okay? Birds are not weapons, and this is ridiculous.
Okay, Blaze, you know what? You're ostrich-sized. I want you to just take your stuff and get out of here.
You don't even know what that word means.
Fine. I mean, the Red Faction name has always been synonymous with destruction, but we felt that for the relaunch of the brand, we really needed to bring a little extra something special to the table. So look what we've accomplished. Our game features true physics-based destruction, plus the ability to kill someone with a very large bird. Think about that.
This humorous piece of marketing is both awesome and creative. Where many trailers and first looks have actors playing the game with very forced dialogue, here the comedy feels natural, like a great game parody skit. This also goes with another reason Volition is a quality developer. They know how to have fun. A lot of Red Faction's story can be doom and gloom, but the gameplay is rooted in fun and this trailer shows it. They were not afraid to break the tone of their game and put in something silly into it. They did this for player amusement and it worked. The trailer is a good piece of marketing as it engages the viewer even if you are unaware of the Red Faction brand and definitely creates interest in the product. The humorous item and trailer are part of the identity of the game and the studio. Red Faction Guerrilla is a great game. The developers worked hard and succeeded at not only creating a memorable destruction system, but a memorable game. Guerrilla saw the series return to where it started on Mars, and while some wished it to retain its first-person perspective, Guerrilla delivered on the series' loved destruction and making an engaging open world to play in. The destruction and action fed into the context of fighting this larger opposing force, and your efforts to drive them off the planet. This gave most of your actions narrative purpose and fit within the story and setting. While the story lacked depth and emotion, it provided a serviceable means to set up a space that allowed for greater and better gameplay. Red Faction Guerrilla is a great entry into the series, and a series I hope we see a return to.